Well, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. This is Pastor Justin. This is Between the Trenches, and we are so grateful that you have logged on, clicked play to listen to this episode today. Rob, it's graduation season.
It is.
Kids are getting out of school. We're moving into the summer months.
Do you remember as a kid, like, this was the most exciting time of the year? You're finishing up the parties and, like, what does summer hold? And I loved it.
And you've got a graduate this year.
She graduates just in a couple of days. It's wild. She's my second graduating.
Yeah.
And I feel old.
So you're seasoned veteran when it comes to graduation at this point. And but graduation season, I was taking Lydia to school this morning, and the parking lot looked vacant. And all the seniors are
They're gone, yeah.
Gibbs has officially had their graduation. They're gone. And I asked Lydia, I said, does it feel weird with all the kids gone? And she was like, it's sad. She's like, all the people that you went to school with for the last 2 or 3 years in the same building, and now all of a sudden they're gone. They're not
out
here.
Yeah.
And my mind went back. I can remember, even to this day, if I was at Gibbs' graduation on Friday, and even to this day, even though there's like this major excitement, it still feels like this little spirit of depression.
Sure.
It's just something kind of sad about it, because there's this strange tension between the excitement of new beginnings and leaving what you have enjoyed and been comfortable with. And it's what we call a transitional phase.
Yeah.
Graduation is a transitional phase in life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the truth about transition, and subtitle Actions and Reactions to When God Parts Our Ways. And sometimes changes are good. Sometimes changes are bad.
Yep.
Not all change is bad. But I think you and I both know that sometimes churches don't handle change very well.
Change in a church can be really great, and you can see some amazing vision and synergy and energy and growth. But man, there's a stigma about church change that it happens when something is bad. Somebody does something wrong or fails morally, or there's a church split, and there's all these bad connotations to it, and it's cast a shadow over change in a church.
I can remember one of my mentors told me when I was transitioning from Valley View to Clear Springs, he said there's only one of two ways to leave a church. You can leave it bad and things are falling apart, or you can leave it good because things are well.
Yeah.
And so not all change is bad,
No.
we're thankful for that, but churches just always don't handle that very well. Somebody recently, I saw this statement somewhere, how that people celebrate new beginnings, but they rarely discuss the emotional tension of endings.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a powerful word.
That's very powerful.
Even healthy transitions can feel uncomfortable because familiarity often creates emotional attachments.
Yeah.
And so today's conversation is deeply personal for both of us.
Yep.
Because after 6 years of ministry together, most of you have probably already learned about this by the playing of this episode. Rob is transitioning into a new season as a senior pastor, and we wanted to just use this time to have some honest conversations about the right way to leave, the wrong way to leave, how to honor God, how to honor people in the process. And so this is going to be, Rob, this episode's going to be unpolished. It's going to be, there's no fake ministry language here. It's going to be raw.
It's pretty raw for both of us right now.
It is. And that's what we want to talk about, the truth about transition. And so for those that haven't learned, obviously Rob is getting ready to become a senior pastor, moving back to the state of Virginia. And instead of talking about that on the front end, we're just going to incorporate all those details into the podcast itself as you listen. Because here was my thought, Rob. A couple of weeks ago, we were our podcast team asked me to kind of get a schedule, and we're taking a summer break. And so this is the last episode of season 1, which you were very instrumental in helping me help. I remember when I had this vision, you were the first person I called, and I said, hey, listen, I need you to help me make a dream come alive. I want to do a podcast. I feel like we got something to offer, and you got with Nelson and Sean, and you guys started facilitating all that growth. And it's been a great first season.
Sure, it's been wonderful.
There's been really powerful episodes. I have had a lot of feedback from people all across the country. But we're going to take a summer break, and we've got a lot happening over the summer, camps and conferences and all of the things that go with that. And so it makes it a little easier on us. And I think it's really fitting to end season 1 like this. And so last week, they kept trying to ask me, hey, what we need 3 more episodes. We need 3 more episodes.
Yeah.
And you were traveling, you were in Virginia, and I kept holding off on the last episode because I felt this was right. And I started punching out some notes. And what I wanted to do was, I feel like there's a pastor out there that there's a staff member out there, and transition can be hard, especially when a good transition can be hard.
Absolutely.
Bad transition can be hard. In our case, it's a good transition. It's painful. We'll talk about that, but I couldn't help but to think there's probably a pastor or a staff member that's walking through this, or has walked through this, or they will walk through this, that maybe needs some insights and some words of encouragement that we could offer.
I'm grateful that you're doing this, and I appreciate your willingness to be raw in this. You text me about it, and I thought, man, we've all done this. We've all switched roles. We've all been somewhere, gone somewhere else, and I think and I hope, and man, this is a prayer, that this would be just a help and encouragement, because I feel like as a senior pastor, you've with a staff member who's leaving, you've done this right by me. I hope that I've done this right by you. I know that, and we'll talk about some of the details of how this came to be and some of the things that maybe could have happened or should have happened and what we wish it could have been. But I hope that this is an encouragement, because it doesn't, I think we're going to get to this, but if I could precursor this whole thing with, I think God, we add or we subtract, but God multiplies. And so when he sends someone here or sends someone there for his kingdom's sake, man, it's exciting. And I'm encouraged by that. And I hope that we can encourage somebody, a pastor, a staff member, whatever that looks like, that might be about to be in this process.
Yeah. So we're going to break this episode down. We're going to look at it in segments. We're going to talk about the reality of transition. We'll talk about the fact that some transition is actually a biblical thing at times. We'll talk about the right ways to go, the wrong ways to go, actions and reactions. And there's a segment that I want to call Finishing Well.
Yeah.
And also, if I could just give a preface, I went through the same thing almost a decade ago when I transitioned. And so I will speak more in this episode as to the actions and reactions of a pastor who is learning that a staff member is leaving. I will let you speak more as a staff member. And my prayer is that this will help somebody,
Absolutely.
that it'll encourage somebody. That's what this Between the Trenches is about, because when you get between the trenches in ministry, obviously one of those things is there are transitional phases that happen in ministry. So segment 1, I want to talk about the reality of transition. Transition's emotional.
It's hard,
Matter of fact, if we could be real raw, Rob and I had a moment Sunday morning where
We did.
Rob had just learned, right before church that the pulpit committee and the staff had unanimously agreed to put him before the church. And I'll let you walk us through kind of what that felt like. And you came into my office right before church time, and we kind of had a moment together.
Yeah, I'll try to work through it now. There was just an overwhelmed feeling. I've said it in this process. For me personally, I've never been a senior pastor, and being called to that role, I feel like David. I feel like Samuel went to David's family and is like, oh, there's the older brother. He's the strong one. He's the leader. That's him. Nope. All right, second oldest. That's it. Nope. 7 others. David was the youngest, the weakest, the shepherd, the one that wasn't even in there. They had to go call him. I feel like David. I feel like there's many people in front of me that maybe are better qualified or capable, but for some reason God has orchestrated this way. So I feel overwhelmed in it. I feel that we're walking into this phase of this almost not yet exciting, but grieving here. There's joy, there's sorrow, and just all of that emotion was wrapped up. I got that call Sunday, came in here because, in part, we'll talk about this, I've wanted to be transparent with you since it became known that this was the direction God was leading. And so it was just overwhelmed and kind of broke down a little bit. Had to get myself together.
I think it's really important that pastors, staff members in any position realize that every transition I've ever experienced personally, or just the people that were around me, and I can tell you, I've been at it long enough now to know that some transitions were really good. Some transitions were, just to be frank, they were really bad.
Yeah.
They're always emotional. So whether it's good or bad, you've got to know that emotions are going to run high. And I think some of that is because ministry relationships tend to run deeper than workplace relationships.
Well, we do so much life together in the really high highs and the really low lows. And it may not be personal for us, but we're walking with people
Sure.
together. And we've experienced, I mean, for you and me, 6 years, we've had some mountaintops have been incredible. We've traveled to the world, Brazil, and missions, and
We
doing
survived COVID.
We did.
Nobody in the building.
And then we've seen some really low lows.
Right.
And while maybe, yes, some personal, whether it's loss or dealing with the stuff you went through mentally and that kind of stuff, emotionally, but then walking through hard meetings with man, we're in your office, and we've had some hard meetings in this office
Sure.
with other people, whether it was staff members or deacons or just church members. We've just been in so many extremes together, and we've been shoulder to shoulder in those things. Really, right. I think it'd be better, more appropriate to say I've been more behind your back, having your back in those things with you leading. And so I think that's what it makes it so much more emotionally invested when we're about to say, all right, well, now you're going to continue leading here, and now I'm going to step out and do something else. There's a disconnect that's really hard to imagine what.
Well,
that's
and I
like.
think you get comfortable with people, and within that sphere of comfortability, you begin to realize that man, who fills that void now? Who takes that spot? And that's a two-way street. That's not just that, you transition from here and now all of a sudden I got to figure out who occupies that spot that Rob held for me practically in ministry, but then in my own personal life. But you have to establish that where you're going as well.
Sure.
And that's where things begin to change, and they feel different, because you're right. You do fight battles together. You celebrate that family that's been waiting for a baby, and then all of a sudden the baby comes. But also, I even think about the moments we've had some pretty catastrophic events in our community for families that weren't even tied to our churches. Yeah. People who were killed in car crashes, and people that chose to take their own life. And now all of a sudden our building and our facility has been thrust into this moment of having the sacred responsibility of caring for families that we don't know. And we do that together. We work through that. Yeah. Somebody unlocks the door and somebody plays the sound. And so you just kind of go through all of those new ministries. You think about the new ministries that we've started over the last 6 years that were not even, they weren't even here back then, and those church crisis moments. And truth is, transitions. And I remember back in January when I first found out I explained to our deacons yesterday that for about 3 or 4 weeks, for about a month, I was grieved. Yeah, just grieved. It felt like somebody had died, and there's fear of the future, the uncertainty, the guilt of, like, could we have done more in the time that we had? And it's an emotional roller coaster. And I think people sometimes celebrate promotion and they ignore the pain of transition. And here's a big word here that I put in the notes for this episode, and that is, not every transition. And listen to me, if you're a pastor listening to this episode, you got to hear what I'm about to say. Yeah. Because I had to wrestle through this on my own for about a month. Not every transition is rebellion or betrayal. Yeah. Sometimes transition is God genuinely, simply changing the assignment. Right. And I think one of the healthiest ways to understand transition is to realize that even throughout the Bible, here's the biblical perspective of it, that God would regularly change people's direction, or he would change their assignment. And it doesn't mean that they were failing. It doesn't mean that there was betrayal. It doesn't mean that it was punishment. The kingdom of God advances through seasons, and we wrote down a few examples of this and looked at it before our episode began. You take Abraham, complete transition of life. You take Joseph. Joseph had a season of change, and we know that this season prepared him for the next season, and that season, the next season. And some of them that you can think of. Throw a couple more out there.
Yeah, you've got like Moses. He had 3 distinct seasons of his life being prepared in Pharaoh's house, and then in the wilderness. Man, God taught him in the wilderness, and then for 40 years leading the nation of Israel. You have Philip in the middle of a revival there in Samaria. God told him to go to meet a eunuch, and there's just a specific God directing over here.
One of our deacons yesterday referenced Philip in the deacons meeting and said he had just taught that morning, and he made a strong comment. He said, Philip's in the middle of revival, and then God all of a sudden uproots him and tells him to go to a desert. Yeah. And he gets in the desert and he finds the eunuch who was reading Isaiah chapter 53. If, and this is what our deacon said, if Philip does not follow the change of assignment, there's a eunuch who suffers the responsibility or suffers the consequences of somebody not following God's will. And so the point is that, and you reference Paul right there at the end. That's another great one, because you study the life of Paul, you learn that sometimes God advances the mission by multiplying the work through separate assignments. And so transition, there is a reality to it, and we all know, we've all heard the stories, we have all experienced them. There is no way around it. Transition happens in life in general, but it happens in ministry as well.
Well, we have the biblical mandate of Ecclesiastes, to everything there's a season.
Yeah.
And sometimes those seasons are really long. And we're talking about seasons of ministry. That can be guys serving in the same place for decades and decades.
Sure.
Sometimes it's shorter. And if God is in this, directing this, then we're trusting him, but realizing that's a biblical precedent. There's a time to plant, a time to harvest, a time to be born. That's hard though. Change. It's just hard. Change. You know, how many Baptists does it take to change a light bulb?
Yeah.
Change?
Exactly.
What? Yeah. So it's hard.
And the emotional aspect is part of it. And so if you're listening, the fears, the insecurities, the grief, let's be honest, even at moments, if you don't guard against it, the anger, it's all real. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It means you're human. And you just got to be able to realize that there is a reality of transition, and it comes with an emotional attachment that is a part of the process. And it's always going to be there, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's happy, whether it's sad. It's part of what we go through. But there is, segment 2, let's talk there is a wrong way.
Sure.
And that has not necessarily been our narrative. I'm not going to say that either one of us at any point have ever been perfect through this whole process or we ever are, but let's be real. We've both seen transitions that are handled terribly.
Yeah.
People who leave secretly, they build underground relationships. They plant seeds of division. To be honest with you, I've seen circumstances where they use church credit cards going out the door that they probably never, they're handled terribly.
Yeah.
And that is a setup, just that makes the whole church vulnerable, and that's tough.
The Lord is not in that.
No. And I actually talked to a pastor last week just trying to get some counsel, and he shared with me that he was losing his youth pastor. He's in another state, and he said, brother, this transition's been happening for 6 months, and I didn't even know about it. And that's heartbreaking. I mean, that's heartbreaking for him, and there's a flip side to it. It's not only that sometimes staff members can leave wrong. Sometimes pastors handle it wrong.
Sure.
I'll let you speak into that. I've had staff members call me and say, listen, 2 weeks ago, my pastor was my best friend. And now all of a sudden, since I've told him I'm transitioning, now I've become his greatest foe. Yeah. And he's completely changed this narrative. And I used to be family, and now I'm foe. And listen to me, pastors, that's not right either. You can't treat every transition that way. There may be transitions that you're unhappy with, the way that staff members handle it.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, especially when it's done right, that can't be the case.
I think the biggest thing is guarding against pride, because it's hurtful. I'm sure as the leader, it's hurting your team. It's hurting the momentum. Maybe you've got to find a new guy, and you got to there's just a lot going on there. And I think that some of that, when it's handled wrong, it just comes down to pride. It comes down to you do get to control the narrative of it, and that's fine. But sometimes that casts a shadow on the person leaving, and that can be handled wrong. I will say, just to talk candidly about this situation with us, you found out of my conversations in a way I probably wouldn't have wanted. And not that I was trying to be secretive or hiding anything. I was trying to protect you in the church and not really bring anything to you that wasn't anything. I was having some casual conversations behind the scene until it was something more official. You found out, and I'm choosing to look at it like the Lord graciously did that for you and me. Let you give you some extra time knowing what was going on. You came to me right away. We had a conversation initially. What's going on? Let's talk about it.
Rob knows that I'm the kind of guy, like, plain talk is
easily understood.
Yeah, I say it all the time.
So, but I will say in that, you very easily could have had the opportunity to have put a wall up, put a whatever, a defensive mechanism for yourself.
And I want to be transparent. In the beginning, you never knew this.
Yeah.
I had to fight against the defensive mechanisms.
Personally, yeah.
And to be fair with our situation, I will say I was never, and I want every listener to hear this, I was never upset with you. I was never mad at you.
You never indicated that.
I was disappointed that I found out through a back door.
Correct.
And you openly, I mean, look, when I found out on a Tuesday night late,
Right.
we were at a conference together. We got home. I immediately sat down with you on that Wednesday.
You did.
On that Thursday, I think it's important that our listeners know you called or text me first thing in the morning and apologized that I'm sorry you found out that way. I would have never wanted it to happen. And I believed every bit of that. And even in that, we had a very candid conversation. And I would say to the staff member, without, please,
No.
I'm not.
This is good. Go for it. Go for
I
it.
would say to the staff
I
member.
would say the same thing.
Yes. I would say to a staff member, if you've been contacted by a church, try to let your pastor know as quick as you can. Communicate it with him so that don't happen. That wasn't intentional.
No.
I'm not mad about that. But if I'm going to offer a word of wisdom, and you just heard Rob, he said he would agree with that, it's better because, you know, and I understand his side. You got to remember, I was in that situation too.
Sure.
When is the right time to tell people?
Yeah,
when
there's
is the
a
wrong
fear,
time?
because I don't want to put something in your mind that you're thinking I'm out the door.
Right.
Because I'm not. I in this particular case, I'm not pursuing leaving.
Sure.
I'm not. I was contacted by this church, and that's great, but that's not always the case. So for some guys that are looking to leave, they're keeping it secretive because they're trying to find they're trying to get their ducks in a row and set things up before they let him know, because once they let him know, they might be out the door pretty quick.
Yeah.
And so there's this weird tension balance there.
So we're wrong ways to leave. Let's fly through just a couple of these. Secret conversations and hidden agendas. Like I would shy away from that. That didn't happen here.
No.
A big one, and Rob told me this back in January, and he's done a great job seeing this through. Checking out emotionally long before your body's physically gone.
Yeah.
That's a hard one, but it's hard because your mind and your heart get moving one direction, and then your body's still here.
You're transitioning. Yeah. How do you have your heart in two places at the same time? How does that work?
Right.
That's difficult.
Sure.
But I think as a staff member, you absolutely can do that. God, continue to grow where you're planted. God has you here for the season that you're in. So finish that season well.
Right.
That is absolutely part of your service to the local church. I firmly believe God will not honor where you're going if you don't leave where you are well.
That's so good. And this is not applicable to our circumstance at all. But if you are transitioning to another ministry that's within a driving distance, you're in the same city, you're in the same community.
That's a tough one.
Do not, whatever you do not build loyalty camps or divisions. No. Rob's going 7 hours away. So this is not our case, but this is to help. It's not always the case. Sometimes people go across town. Sometimes they go, and I'm not saying that's wrong. If that's God's assignment, if that's God's will, I'm not saying that's wrong. We have to really guard. If you're the one leaving, do not leave and take people with you.
Okay, so let me put that back on you. When you left Valley View, which is from here 15 minutes?
15, 20 minutes.
Did you ask anybody to come with you?
Not a single soul.
Yeah. Have you ever asked anybody to come?
Never one time.
Now, to that point, though, there have been people come, but that's natural. That's natural.
Right.
Trend. However, but I think you did that well when you left there. I would say that those that are taking or trying to build little camps and take people with them,
right?
What they're trying to do is not build the kingdom of God. They're trying to build their own kingdom. And if they're trying to build their own kingdom, God's not in that. God's not going to bless that. And that's if we're all about his kingdom, then driving 20 minutes or 7 hours, listen, let him build his church.
Right.
We don't need to be taking people with us.
I would say to the pastor, don't treat people like property instead of stewarding God's call on their life. Passive-aggressive behavior can become a part of this process if you're not careful. Poor communication, public positivity while private bitterness. You don't want to underwrite it that way. That's not healthy. I would say this before we move to the right ways to leave is, look, most ministry transition itself is not destroyed by the decision. It's destroyed by the reactions of both the staff member and the pastor.
100%.
And we have to be super careful.
Yeah.
Listen, if I If I trust you enough to get up every single Sunday and lead our people into the presence of God through worship, then why would I not trust you enough to know that you're following what you believe to be God's will for your life?
So to me, that speaks to someone's character all along while they're serving. So obviously you might have somebody, staff member, and somebody might be out there, pastor, who's got a staff member who's been shady all along. Well, then that's a different transition, and you might need to cut that cord.
Yeah.
But in this case, I would agree. I've tried to live right, do right, serve right, and so I appreciate that trust.
I want to say it one more time because I think that's a big thing. If you're a church member and you trust your pastor's words every Sunday, and you're hanging on to that preached word that he's given to you, and you bring your family to sit under his ministry and his leadership, and then that pastor all of a sudden follows another direction, he feels God calling him to a mission field or to something different, you're going to have to really fight against your emotions on that, because if you trusted him enough to lead you this Sunday, you can't all of a sudden just be mad at him,
right?
Because he made it hurts, it stings, you fight those emotions. But again, I have trusted Rob for 6 years to lead our church in worship. And if I trusted him to do that, I ought to trust him in this decision. And so I have to fight my own emotions. But most ministry transitions are not destroyed by the decision itself. It's the reactions that are surrounding it. Right way to handle transitions. There's a wrong way to do it. We've talked about some of those.
Sure.
There's a right way. I think there's two things that are really, really important. First of all, Rob, let's talk about the importance of honest communication. Yeah. I remember that January Wednesday, the thing that I said, and I probably overemphasized it, I said, just communicate with me honestly.
To which I said
that you would, absolutely.
100%, yeah.
And as long as that happens, I can work with anybody.
Yeah.
And I've not always had that courtesy. I've been in staff transitions where you didn't have honest conversation, and it's hard because there are behind the scene assumptions and things like that make it very, very difficult. And I'd say honest conversations early, they really do matter.
They do. And as a staff member, once it's out in the open, once it's made known, you have nothing to hide. In fact, the honest communication builds the trust, and it builds the continued trust that hopefully you've established all the way along. But for you and for me, I committed to whatever I heard, the conversations I had, you would know right away. And I've 100% kept that.
He has.
And that's helped you. And then you've responded to me so well in that. I would tell you, hey, I'm having this meeting or I'm having this conversation, and your reaction has been, okay, man, I'm praying.
Yeah.
And you've been gracious. Not that I expected anything different, because I didn't, but I've been so relieved in that you haven't held it over my head. You haven't been like, well, what are we going to do now? I mean, just nothing like that.
You know, something I've learned, Rob, I can handle, me personally, and I think this is true of most people, I can handle difficult truth much better than I can handle hidden truth.
That's a good word. Yeah.
And I would rather somebody just be straight up with me, as much as it hurts, as much as I hate it. I would rather have those awkward conversations than awkward conversations are often necessary conversations, is the way I would say it.
Or hard.
Yes.
Hard conversations. They're necessary.
Right. I would much rather that happen. Silence creates assumptions and confusion, and it's difficult. And I want to talk for a second about how honoring relationships means communicating clearly instead of avoiding tension. I think sometimes we run from tension because we don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's better just to go ahead and deal with it on the front end so that things don't get wacky and they don't get wonky.
Yeah, and I think especially in this setting, because if you don't communicate, your mind is going to go 100 different directions for both of us. What's he thinking? Who's he talking to? What's he saying? What is the attitude that's being portrayed? Whereas if you're just communicating, even though it's hard, even though you don't want to have these conversations,
right,
it eliminates the tension of not knowing what the other person is thinking.
Right.
And it enables you to be able to part ways. Well, in fact, we had this conversation yesterday. I hope, because we not only do we have a ministry friendship, we have a personal friendship. And I hope that because of this, even though we're going to be in different places, that's strengthened. But that could easily be destroyed in this season when there's tension
Sure.
that's unnecessary
Sure.
because we lacked communication.
Well, this whole process, I mean, obviously I've been processing this for 5.5 months now, and this is what I've come to a conclusion. I can, let me finish this statement, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I can replace a worship pastor easier than I can replace a personal friend. And that's been the hard part, because not every person has your best interest at heart.
Right.
Not every person can be trusted immediately. And so I think where the Lord really began to relieve some of my tension in the beginning was I figured out that Rob and I have much more than just a working relationship. We have personal friendship.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we've never been on vacation together. We've never got a cabin over the weekend with our families together. That's not the way that friendship has been. But I always knew that Rob would have there's been a lot of times that I've brought Rob in my office and said, hey, I got this decision to make. And I ask him exclusively to the neglect of other staff members, because I've trusted you and God's given us more time together. That's part of the process. So for me, what I figured out was this is harder on me on a personal level than it is a professional level.
Sure.
Because we can start the process of finding out who's doing worship and who is out there all across the nation, and start trying to figure out who checks these boxes and this box and who fits our church. That's fine, and that'll happen. But it doesn't mean that new person will come in and that you'll immediately trust them.
Right.
And obviously God gave us a good start because we started during COVID together, and we really had to learn to communicate and trust each other and figure out what does this look like.
Yeah.
We got all these millions of dollars of debt, and how are we going to pay our bills? And you were brand new here, and we watched God sustain that and do that. One more thing that I would say about communication before we move to the next thing that I want to talk about on the right way is that if you're a staff member transitioning, and this is a hard balance. He learned this hard balance. I learned this hard balance. Looked a little bit different. Mine was with deacons. His was with me. Is that leadership should probably hear about things before it comes back around as a rumor. Because that if there's only been one moment that if I could change, and I know you feel the same way,
I do.
the way that I found out, hey, is Rob leaving our church? And I remember my heart just plummeting, and I'm thinking, I've not heard about this. Yeah. And I'm not saying that accusational. In the end, I believe the sovereignty of God was at work, and he made it all work accordingly. But I remember the initial shock factor. Yeah. And so I would just say to a staff member, have those conversations as early as you possibly can. And if you're not going to have those conversations, just be on really guard, making sure that those considerations don't prematurely get around.
Sure.
And that'll help your pastor or anybody that's over you.
So let's have some real talk here and just some practical behind the scenes. For me, I have 3 older children. I have a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 16-year-old. I felt that early on it was good to bring them into this loop. I'm trying to lead our family. I'm trying to shepherd them, shepherd their hearts. They're all 3 in this really interesting season of life. Mm-hmm. And I felt that they needed to know that this is a possibility early on. It's something we're praying about. It's something that we're just seeking God. We don't have any answers. We don't have any specifics, but we're praying about it. And I'd like for them as 20, 18, and 16 to pray as well. Letting them know that, then backdoor, it wasn't intentional. It was just side comment that was made. Somebody heard it and was like, well, that's interesting. It ends up backdoor, friend, sister, whatever, get back to you. Would I change that? Yes. But I say that to the staff member to say, listen, I would, in hindsight, would I have told him about the same time I told my kids? I think so. I think that you start talking about it, it's going to get out. There's going to be people, like we're Baptists, like people talk. It's just going to happen.
And I will say the majority of things, we know this, it finds its way to a staff desk or to a pastor's desk.
You're going to find out. And so I would just say to be cautious in that. I learned that lesson. I have a regret in that. One, I need to shepherd my family well, but I think that I probably should have brought that earlier.
And I will add, and I promise you, I'm not asking for any kind of accolade or anything here. And I think I'm this guy. Be the kind of pastor, if you're a pastor that's listening, where your staff is comfortable to be able to talk to you about things like that. Where they're not intimidated, where they don't have to live under this fear factor that if there's one thing that I never want to be a pastor who leads a staff who feels like the staff is constantly scared to death to even tell him anything because they're afraid that the iron fist is going to come down.
Right.
And so always facilitate a spirit of grace, a spirit of accommodation, so that your team, your staff has that, where you've established enough credibility where people feel like I can have that conversation with him and not be nervous about it. Is it uncomfortable? Yes. Hurtful? Yes, but I don't have to worry about, rebuttal or consequences. I have the liberty to follow. And so I would just say to every pastor listening, build the kind of relationship with your team where they know that they can have honest conversation.
I think as a staff member looking at a senior pastor, one of the ways that as a senior pastor can do that well is it's pretty obvious when you want your staff to be loyal to you. It's pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if your loyalty is to the Lord and your staff sees that, and what you want is what's best for the church, and it's not about you, it's not about your name or your reputation or your leadership, then as a staff member, that makes it so much easier for me to approach you, because I want what the Lord wants.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that you want what the Lord wants makes that easier, because I'm not coming to you and going to hurt your kingdom and your name and your reputation. No, we're doing this for the Lord. And when that's the focus, and when it's your focus, that makes it easier on the staff member to approach the senior pastor to say, I know you're trusting the Lord. I am too.
There is an essence where staffing in a local church feels a little bit like marriage in some capacities. Because you both have to be working together for the glory of God, and in a marriage for the good of your family, and a church and the good of your church. And what you just said is a great segue for me to just kind of inject this real quick. If you're in marriage, I teach people this all the time. If my love for Jesus is first and my love for Hannah is second, then Hannah's going to get much more love than if I reverse that priority line. Same is true of her. She needs to make Jesus the priority and then make me second. Because if I'm second, it's much better than me being first. And so as a staff member, if your loyalty is to the Lord, that's who you take your cues from. That's who you take your directives from. And if you take those cues and directives from Him and you're walking with Him, our church becomes better. And this is the part where I really interject something that's hard to say, but it's truthful. If God's will is for you to be pastoring in Virginia, you're no good being a worship pastor in Tennessee.
100%.
And I have to believe that by faith. I got to have confidence in that in faith. Right. And it would be the same of me if I was leaving right now. If it's God's will for me to be a missionary in Brazil, then it does a church in Corrington no good for me to be their pastor. Yeah. And so if our loyalties are exactly what you said, if our loyalties are right, and it's very important that every staff and every pastor understands that, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these things should be added. Matthew 6:33. It's literally what the scripture says. And so the other thing, we'll talk about it really quickly, and that is just the importance of good timing. Timing is very important. It's important for Rob and him making the transition to where he's going. It's important for us to be able to do what we need to do. Yeah. Both ministries have timelines that need to be met. I've actually been, I think sometimes the timing, the way that it works, is it becomes later divine confirmations. And we've kind of witnessed that down to specific dates and timestamps to be like, it's pretty conspicuous. As much as we hate it, and as much as we hate it, God is in it. Mm-hmm. And conversations, they ought to be ordered. Agreement and unity on timelines ought to be.
I think this has just changed in our culture too, because it used to be like if somebody was going to another church, that church doesn't associate with this church. There's just a disconnect there. Nobody knows anybody. With social media, with live stream, like as soon as one church knows, the other church knows.
Right.
And
they can be miles away.
Yeah. And we've seen God do some pretty neat lining up of things, even in our situation. But that can be a challenge. And I think if both places are, in fact, I had this conversation in Virginia last week. I asked him, I said, can we please just be on the same page and have a conversation about this, so that we need to do right by Clear Springs and we need to do right by their church. So like, if the Lord's in this, He'll help orchestrate that. I believe in His sovereignty. I believe in His help in that. And I'm grateful for that. It's when we get our own timing in place and we try to rush things, or we try to make sure, we try to control the narrative, which I've been a part of those transitions, and that is hurtful. And it's hurtful.
Sure.
Can I say something along the same lines with that? And this might transition into our last segment. I think as a staff member, when you indicate that you're looking to go somewhere, God is leading you, that's great. There has to be specific timelines in it, and that includes an end date. There has to be, like, you can't have this just stretched out ambiguous timeline of, oh, well, whenever that happens and then we sell the house and this. No, I think you and your pastor need to come to an agreement. And I learned this the hard way. The last ministry I was at, which ironically is the one I'm going back to, he gave me a hard end date. And I was like, ooh, that was kind of tough. But I look back and I'm like, no, I needed that. The church needed that. Clear Springs is going to need to move on to whatever the next thing that God has for the next person that God has for them. And so if you're a staff member, don't string them along. Mm. It's not personal at that point. It's for the sake of the church. It's the good of the church. And if I could say this, let the senior pastor dictate the narrative. You're going to be gone. They're still here. They're leading this church. His loyalty, and I understand what I'm saying, that it's to the Lord, but he's the shepherd of this church. So he's got to be mindful of what's best for this church.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I love Rob and as much as I love your family,
right?
Clear Springs is who I have to protect.
Correct.
And it's funny you say that, and it's maybe your answer, because I literally was going to transition out of this section by saying, all right, not a rapid fire, multiple questions, but a rapid answer. Okay. I was going to say, as a staff member, what would you say to the exiting staff member to do? Would that be your answer?
Yeah, absolutely. That, as far as the timing,
yes.
Go with let you dictate the narrative. You're staying here. You're leading this church. And be okay with that.
Because I was going to do the same, and I was going to speak to the pastor.
Yeah.
I was going to say to the pastor, if you have a staff member leaving, and they've been a good staff member, they've served your church well. And listen, I'll say this at the end. Rob has served our church so well. We're at a level now that we weren't at when he got here. He's been loyal. He's been faithful. He's been committed. He's been a stellar. I literally last week, I told the pulpit committee when they interviewed me about you, I said, look, y'all, let me make this simple. I'm going to make this real simple. If Rob called me back in 5 years and said, my heart is still there, I need a job, I would hire him back. Mm. And anytime that a person is leaving, and I unprompted, I told him that, I would hire him back in a heartbeat, no questions asked, because I've seen where his loyalties was. And I'm not going to punish him for doing the will of God for his life and leading his family to be in the perfect will of God. If you've had, this is what I would say to every pastor listening, if you have had a good staff member and they're leaving you and they're making an exit, treat them with the same honor and respect that you would treat them on an anniversary date or on a birthday. And we're going to see Rob out of here well. I've already told Rob. I talked to our deacons last night. They agreed to it. And I'm talking to our finance committee. We're going to give him compensations for a few weeks that he won't even be here. He won't even be here working. He won't be leading. But it's a token of our appreciation to see him out well. And so, listen, don't take it personal. Mm-mm. Don't be ugly. Don't be nasty. I'm the type of guy, even people that left ugly, I still choose to try to see them out well.
Yeah, because you have proven that, absolutely.
It's the right way to do it.
Yep.
And so I would say to every pastor, the importance of communication and good timing, but just see them out well. Rob, let's talk about the last segment, finishing well. If you are the one leaving, how you finish leaves, it says a lot about your character.
Yeah.
And you are finishing well, I will say that. But speak into that a little bit to those guys that are out there listening in virtual world right now in their car or on their headphones while they're mowing the yard. And they're in exactly what you're going through and they don't really know what to do. Huh. Tell them some of the things that you determined early about finishing well.
All right. So the Bible says the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. I think you need to ask yourself, are you a good man? Mm. Are you willing to step into the role God has called you to be as number one as a man, but then you're in church leadership. So are you going to be a good man? And are you going to do right by the Lord? Are you going to do right by your family? Are you going to do right by the church? Because the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. And that includes finishing well. Finish out your assignment. Your assignment is not done until you step foot off the property. And I would say even then, if you've invested well, if you've poured your life into these people, your assignment doesn't finish, because there's going to be phone calls. There's still going to be celebrations. We're still connected so much today with social media and seeing the lives of people. And when an issue comes up, you might be pastoring across the country, but somebody's going to still call you.
Right.
And so I would say, be faithful to the end. If you still have breath in your lungs, you still have an assignment from the Lord, and that is where you are in the moment. Now, there's obviously in transition, there's some disconnect that happens. Your heart's going to another place, but listen, I'm in the season now. Don't don't miss the opportunities God has right in front of you to continue to do what he's called you to do, which is pastor. Yeah. It's lead, it's to shepherd.
I was telling some of our senior adults last Wednesday, I did a graveside funeral for a lady that I pastored at Valley View. I've been gone from Valley View for a decade.
Right. You still do this constantly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I jokingly said, if I gave one piece of advice to every pastor, minimize the number of churches you pastor, because there is an essence once you leave, you're continuing to pastor certain people.
Yeah.
And so still to this day, I do funerals. In September, I'm going to go back and preach a homecoming at a church first church I pastored that I was at. 2004 was when I went there. So 22 years later, and I'm still ministering to a certain demographic of people in that church. And so you've got to be faithful until the final day, and don't ever stop serving before you leave. At the time of airing of this podcast, our church now knows that Rob is making an exit, and so now he's the one put to the test, and he's going to finish strong.
I like this phrase. You wrote this: leave blessing instead of confusion. What a good word. I would love to have nothing but blessing and encouragement and wonderful things in my wake, as opposed to destruction and chaos and division and confusion. And if you do that right, you leave well. I think the Lord honors that. And to that point, where again, not to my own accolades, but I'm going back to where I've previously served. God allowed me to see that it's not about God brought me to Tennessee for 6 years for some very specific reasons, and maybe one day we'll get to share that. But I know a few of them. I'm still learning some of them, I think. But to be able to go back is a testament to the leadership that was there. I think also to how I left, and I'm eager to do the same thing here because again, it's not. End of the day, it's just not about us. It's about the Lord and His glory and the good of His church.
Well, I think starting well impresses people, but ending it well obviously reveals the deepest part of our character. So last segment, very quickly, and we'll rapid through this one. It's just actions and reactions. Reactions often determine whether transitions stay healthy or they become toxic. I'm just going to list these really fast. Some common unhealthy reactions are offense, insecurity. A big one is territorialism. There is not and never can be whose camp are you on?
Yeah,
whose side are you on?
Both sides.
I'm right, he's wrong. He should never do this to us. Me trying to make you look bad because you're leaving. It says that's hogwash stuff. Yeah. Don't get involved with that stuff.
It's all pride.
Yeah, don't stop communicating because it feels awkward. I mean, I walked into Rob's office this morning and I said, hey, I got a missions task. Could you take care of it for me? Now, the easy thing, and I'll be honest, the devil kind of convinced me he's leaving. Don't bother him with that. But I know that you want to finish well.
I do.
And so I walked in and I said, hey, I got a missions committee thing I need you to email out. And he jumped on it immediately and took care of that. And so that's just something that we've determined. Listen, we all have to really guard against the assumption that because a person is leaving, they no longer love the ministry that they're parting from. Just because you're leaving Clear Springs doesn't mean you don't love Clear Springs.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I think that was part of the emotions that you experienced on Sunday.
Sure.
Is the reality of, wow, I've got just a few more choir specials. I've got just a few more. Yeah. Honestly, I don't know that you've got another choir practice. The truth is that
maybe one,
things change, you know? And so just look, guard against the assumption. My assumption is not because Rob is leaving, he just doesn't love us no more, doesn't want to be a part of us no more. And so we got to guard against that emotional reaction of rejection, because not every ending is rejection. So some healthy reactions are grace and blessing and honesty and trust and emotional maturity.
I like that last one. Let's just be big boys about this.
Yeah.
Let's step into the role that God has called us to be as men, as biblical men, as leaders in the church, and we don't have to act like second graders.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
All right, we're going to go through this last part really, really fast because we've held your attention for 48 minutes now, and that's okay. But this is an important episode to us. I think it's going to be an important episode for a lot of people to listen, trying to figure it out. And some of these principles are true for a pastor who doesn't even have a staff, but he's trying to figure out, should I move on from this assignment at this church? And so some of these principles are the same. Practical advice, Rob, this one I'm letting you take it. Practical advice that you would give to people that are transitioning out of a church.
You have to start by praying. You have to start by praying. If God's not in it, then don't do it. And let me say this, going back to being a big boy, Like, just because something goes wrong doesn't mean you need to step out.
Right.
Just because there's tension or you didn't do something that he wanted or vice versa, like, just because there's a problem or there's issues doesn't mean it's time to step out. In fact, sometimes that is the time to buckle down.
Sure.
Listen, with music, oftentimes between pastors and musicians or worship pastors, that's a tense relationship because a lot of times worship pastors are divas. And they want their own agenda, and they're not willing to get on board with what the pastor wants. And I see it in the groups that I'm involved in. And every 2 or 3 years, they're changing worship pastors because it's not my agenda. You're the pastor of the church. I've got to get in line with that. And so I would say, just because there's some tension, just because there's, you're not doing something, or you ask me not to sing a song that I love or whatever, doesn't mean it's time to step out. So you need to pray through that. You need to seek wise counsel. You need to avoid the emotional decision. Just because your feelings got hurt, be a big boy and come to work the next day. Yeah. Be direct, be honest. Honor the leadership conversations that God has entrusted you with and the position that you've been put in. Like, step into the role that God has given you and do that well. Yeah. Don't be petty about that.
I love the next one. Never, this is not going to be our case at all. It wouldn't be even if it was.
No.
Never recruit people to follow you. Yeah. If this is a crosstown move, never. Rob, I can say this with confidence. I have no idea how many hundreds or thousands of people listen to this podcast. If there is a human being out there that hears this podcast that I have ever enticed to leave a church that I was a part of, if I've ever tried to recruit you, if I've ever tried, pick the phone up and call me.
Yeah.
Call me out any way you want.
Yep.
I've made it a practice of my life. I will never, ever, ever recruit against the ministry that I'm leaving to come to a ministry that I'm going to. That's for God to determine that.
Absolutely. And
so, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I would say with the next one, if you're on the staff member side of things, if you're going somewhere, I love the phrase, burn the ships. When you get there, go in. Burn the ship, don't burn the bridge.
Yeah, it's good.
You need to be able to don't poison the relationships when you're on the way out.
Leave in such a way that you can go back through that church door and worship with them, or even come back as a future staff member if God ever directed that way. Mm-hmm. And do not. I've had people leave. I'd never hire them back again. Mm-hmm. Now they're always welcome to worship. I'd never hire them. Yeah. You are not one of those. I will say that it is really, really, really important to always leave a ministry so that you can come back in the front door. Should that opportunity ever come up. Just even worship in a service. Practical advice for leaders and pastors. I would say these very, very quickly. Don't react emotionally first. You're going to have to get yourself together. It's a real thing. It's easy to do. I've been there. I've been there in every transition. I was there in January when I found out you were considering it. It's an emotional knee-jerk reaction. You've got to guard against it. You have to. Take a breath. Eat a bowl of vanilla ice cream. Sit on your back porch, ask God to help you, take a day off, go golfing, go fishing, do whatever you do. Drink some coffee, take a breath, step back before you say or do something stupid, and listen to the person carefully before you assume their motives. Yeah. Because a lot of times it's just following God's assignment. It's a big one. Do not punish people for obeying God.
Please.
Do not punish them for obeying God. If you've trusted them to lead, trust them to follow Jesus. Yeah. If you've trusted them to lead you, trust them to follow Jesus. Avoid controlling leadership culture. Publicly protect unity. Mm-hmm. Celebrate people instead of resenting them. Release them. Look, leadership is not proven by what you can keep. It's proven by what you can release well. And so there's a couple things that I want to say to the pastors. Okay. Anything you want to say, and we'll come down this last concluding.
Yeah, I think
we'll wrap it up.
You almost just hit on it. When we release people, when we release staff members, again, I think it goes back to God is in the multiplication business. We do addition, He multiplies. So let's get on board with that. Instead of looking at we're losing somebody, how about we look at it as we get to send somebody.
Right.
We get to see the kingdom of God expand and God do some incredible things that, to what we talked about earlier, if we weren't or we were to hold somebody back, what are we missing out on?
Right.
What are we holding back on? And so let God do the multiplication, and it's exciting to see what He will do with that.
I guess it's been about a year ago now, Rob. We put 2 signs at our entrances. Mm-hmm. We put one on Tassel Pike. We put one on Emory Road. They're marquee signs. They're beautiful. We spent a lot of money on them.
We did.
neither one of them say Rob Maddox Baptist Church or Justin Pratt Baptist Church.
Right.
This is not our church.
Right.
This church right here, the place that you're going, they belong to Jesus.
Correct.
And as far as I can tell, whether it's people, material possessions, buildings, facilities, whatever, the only permanent fixture in this place is Jesus himself.
Right.
I'm not permanent. You're not permanent. There'll come a day that I will not be here. I will go to heaven. I will retire. The only permanent thing at any church in America is the Lord Jesus Christ and his sweet Holy Spirit. And with that being said, the kingdom is so much larger than one role. Healthy transitions are possible. They don't have to end in division. This one is not going to end in division. We're going to take advice from each other. We're going to take cues from each other. And if I could speak directly to our listeners who may be currently in a transition to pastors, staff members, volunteers, church members, look, walk in humility, walk in honesty, walk in grace, maturity, integrity. This is the moment where I just kind of take a second to thank you. We've fought together. We've rolled our sleeves up. I feel like we've been faithful. We have spent days where we have laughed at people and at circumstances.
A lot.
We have got to stand beside each other on some mountaintops.
Yeah.
We got to watch a pavilion be built. We got to watch a balcony open, and we would stand up there in the dust of sheetrock and building materials and just bask in the goodness of God. And we've had some moments we dreaded. We've had meetings that we've been called up here late in the middle of the night and had to deal with families. And we've had, all of that stuff starts coming back to you, and I'm sure we'll think of a million more. But this is the moment where I want to openly thank Rob for standing in the trenches with me and walking through the hard seasons and celebrating on the mountaintops. And I love you. I love your family. This is not the end. This is just the end of this leg of the journey.
This season.
And I wish you the very, very, very best. And I promise you there'll be a lot of days that I pray for you. I pray for your church.
Same.
And so that's my moment, and I'll let you wrap it up, and then we'll close this episode out for the summer.
Well, I appreciate the kindness, the grace that you've shown in this. I love you as well. And it has been God appointed for us to come here and serve here. He has taught me. I've learned from you, and I'm excited to put into practice some of those things that I have learned and grown in. And I don't think that if I had not come here, I don't think we would be. I don't think I'd be going back to pastor. I don't know. I just don't see that. So I think God brought me here for a very specific reason, for me personally, also for Clear Springs. And so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for leading well. And I'm excited to see what the Lord is going to do. Not just for me personally, but if I could say, anytime I've left a church, it's always gotten better where I've left. The next guy in takes it to another level. And I'm excited to see what God's going to do at Clear Springs with that.
One of our deacons told me in our meeting, it was a compliment of all compliments. He says, it looks like you've become the Nick Saban of pastoring. Nobody wants to pastor till they come here, and then all of a sudden everybody wants to be a pastor.
You keep sending them out.
But I am very, very thankful that God's going to use you regardless. And you got bright days ahead. We've got bright days ahead. You're always an open door here. We love you. And I want to. The very last thing I want to say is, when you think about Clear Springs, you think about names like Dalton and Garrett and Vidito and Tipton, and there's just certain names. And I know that your tenure here was much shorter, but I do want you to know what you accomplished in the 6 years that God gave you, us, and God gave you to us and us to you. You concreted your name. And in my opinion, I think Maddox is one of those names that will go with us in our history, and we'll never forget what you've done. So
Amen.
Love you, and I appreciate you. Listen, here's what I would say in conclusion. Not every ending is failure. Not every transition is betrayal. Sometimes God parts our ways not to destroy relationships, but to expand assignments. Healthy transitions don't happen accidentally. They happen intentionally. And I want to thank you for this first season, for being between the trenches with us as we've talked about life, leadership, and ministry. And in this season finale, God bless you. Please share the episodes. We'll be back after the summer's over at the beginning of next year with lots more content that we can't share with you. I hope you have a great summer. God bless you. Thank you for standing with us and walking with us as we've been in the trenches.